I've thought for years that they ought to send 2 screws with these types of applications, because you take one of them in and out and in and out so many times, usually tear up the head on it, especially the little screws. They make some that are about half this size, and usually they snap, they break. And you ought to have one that you can use for practice and tear it up, and then the finished one, I'll supply one for the final application, but they've not listened to me yet. Alright, I'm going to start with a file and just clean this up. The temptation is to roll this off. It's very easily done. You want to try to keep this as flat as you can keep it. You do not want to let that roll off this way, because if you put a gap under that very edge of that grip cap, you'll see it. Matter of fact, when I get done getting it fitted, I'll probably hollow out the very middle to where nothing touches except just the very outer edge of the metal. About the outer 1/3 or 1/4 of it is all I want to touch. The middle, if it's got a little cavity in there where that screw can push down, that makes the edges nice and tight. And then I'll seal that thing with epoxy and let some of that epoxy go up into those little holes they drilled. Got to get all the dust out of that hole so the screw can go back in there. Alright, now I'm going to scribe a line. Thing's got twisted again. I'm going to put a line around that so I know where I'm cutting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dig out the inside of that. I have a little tool here. It's called a Fordham. I'm just going to chew out the inside where it's not touching anything anyway. And stay away from that line about 1/4 of an inch. Now you can see how much of that I've taken out. You can see underneath there how much of that I've removed. So I'm down 30 seconds. I'm going to cut a little bit more off the front with this straight edge. This is a really bright little light. I need a little tiny bit off, about the 1/8 of an inch on that front. Now I'm going to set this thing in epoxy. To keep this metal from the epoxy sticking to the metal, I'm going to coat this with Johnson's paste wax. Take a toothbrush and just rub it all over it, and the edge of this screw, because you don't want to glue the screw in there. You can never get it out. Just take a little Johnson's. Coat that pretty good. Wipe off the excess. You don't want anything where epoxy can stick to it, it'll make it part of this wood. This is a release agent. They make sprays for it, but this works just as good. And I'll wipe off the excess. Actually, with an air hose, I'll blow it off. This is a bag of real fine walnut dust. And this is just plain old epoxy, like you buy at Ace Hardware. I use the gel, keeps it from running all over the place. And just get yourself a little piece of wood. This happens to be a piece of a gun stock I was making years ago, and it just had a smooth finish, so I use it. Just cut your little popsicle stick, mix that up, and you only got, they say 5 minutes, but you got a few minutes more than that, depending on the temperature, humidity. If it's real hot, you better have your ducks in a row, because it's going to set up in 5 minutes. If it's not too hot, it'll slow it down a little bit. Mix that up, pour you some brown dust on it. It makes a dark brown paste. When you use walnut dust on a walnut stock, even if it fills in a little gap, you can't hardly see it because it's the same color as the wood. Okay, that's pretty good. Blow off the excess dust so you don't have a place with a whole bunch of dust. And put this just inside of that pencil mark. It's going to squish out. That's going to happen anyway. Keep it away from those threads going down in that hole. Okay. Make sure my arrow point is forward. Drop it in there, about where it goes. I don't want to scoot this thing around back and forth too much. I want it to pretty much just go straight down. So when that screw starts trying to twist it, I'm going to hold it still. Get my thread, my screw head straight forward and backward. See how that's squished out around there? When that dries a little bit more, I'm going to scrape that off. I'm going to let it set up for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. Alright, you've heard of something so boring it's like watching paint dry. Well, watching epoxy dry is just about that boring, so we're going to turn this off. Alright, this epoxy is about gelled out. It's not set up, but it's got some solidness to it where you can scrape it off. If it's too wet, it'll be gummy and stick to everything. If it's completely dry, it's hard and you can't get it off. See, I can take the excess off because it's kind of between the two right now, and it doesn't stick to this metal because I put wax on it, and it's not sticking to the wood because I've interrupted its drying schedule. And this little stick I'm using to pull it off with is just a piece of wood. Same wood as the stock, so it's the same hardness, and I sharpened it on a little sander like a little scalpel, like a little tiny scalpel, so it can scrape. But because it's the same hardness as the walnut stock, it doesn't scratch it. This is all about timing. Concrete's this way. Concrete can interrupt this drying, and it's very fragile. You can hit it with a hammer after it's been dry for 45 minutes or an hour, depending on the weather, and you can just make concrete just turn all into little bitty chunks, little bitty. It's very fragile. Alright, so I've scraped up all the excess. Now there's only going to be about a 1/16 of an inch of this showing around this cap anyway. So all this out here is excess. Main thing is I wanted to get off that metal. And this little walnut stick will not, it won't scratch that metal. Now I'm ready for the bandsaw. Alright, this little lug, little turn down lug, this is just something I use to mount it in the milling machine. It's an indexing place that gets me in the same spot every time. I'm going to cut it off and get rid of it. I'm just going to continue this straight line down, clip it off, clip the tail of the rubber pad off. I'm just freehanding this. I'm just getting rid of waste. I'm also keeping in mind the center line that's still on the bottom and the top. I'm watching everything, every cut I make, I'm looking at that center line. Okay, back at the vise, I've got my majority of the wood cut off with a bandsaw. I used to call that cheating, but now I just treat a bandsaw as a normal tool. I need to alter this center line. Yeah, this new center line is only 1/8 of an inch different than the old one, but it is the new line, and I use it. I reference the center line constantly. There's probably some sort of machine somewhere that can read that line and can tell symmetry, both, you know, right and left being the same. I just use my eyes. I've gotten used to using my eyes. I'm right-eye dominant, but I've got such stigmatism that my left eye is actually more accurate. I can look at something straight with my right eye and it looks crooked. I turn it over and it still looks crooked. So I've learned to just use my left eye when it's important, but I'm constantly referring to and looking at this. Another thing that makes a difference, this light right now is sitting over here to the side. I'm going to put that light dead in the middle to where that light is shining straight at me down that center line. That light needs to be on that center line. The middle of that light bulb needs to be very close to that center line. It makes a difference because shadows and optical illusions and things like that make a big difference. Now I used to use a rasp, and I used to have pretty good arms. I had a big old huge bad toothy rasp and abused it for years and years and years. I've even sharpened it. I can sharpen a rasp. And you can peel some wood. You know, you can really lay into it and peel some wood. And rasping, filing, and sanding has its place. It does. and I'll eventually get to that. But another way that you can remove wood quickly with a lot less effort and a lot more dust. I actually have a whole assortment of rasps, and I will use them all, and we'll discuss all of them before too terribly long. I've got rasps, and I've got files, and I've got chisels just as much as the next guy. But there's something that I really got into in the last few years, and that's a grinder. Well, thanks for choosing to spend your time here with me today. I hope you've enjoyed this program. I'll try to post a new segment each weekend. In addition, if you'd like to read about a stock that I made, and then it took a 20-foot free fall, click on the link at the bottom of this page. It's called The Broken Gun. It's a story I wrote a few years ago about my 2 boys. Sometimes life's hard and things get broken. Now and then we get a chance to fix them. I'm so grateful for the opportunity I had to repair this broken stock. It led to a restoration that I never could have imagined. As always, if you like this video, please click the like button and share this with your friends. Have a great day.